Hello, my name is Gus Fiddler, and this is my project on COVID and soccer within the world. Obviously, soccer and a lot of other things around the world, sports in general, were hit very hard with the pandemic that occurred last year. And I believe one of the main things that was a problem within the sport for both the players and the fans was the fact that spectators and fans were not allowed in stadiums. Uh, the pandemic limited that and completely stopped it around the world, and I think that affected how the players were able to play and how that affected the game. Specifically in the Premier League, uh, playing with your home fans was a massive advantage, and within the season you play both home and away, and limiting that extra pressure that comes from playing away and losing that advantage you get from playing at home, I believe affected a lot of teams and their success within the season. Other aspects that came along with the problems of COVID were financial challenges. Teams in the Premier League definitely took a hit when losing their fans, because fans and spectators coming to the games was a large part of how these big clubs made money. You think a lot of these teams, they charge £50 to £60 for the base tickets at games, so when they're missing out on 60 to 70,000 fans that are paying that sort of price for a ticket, that's a large amount of income that these big teams are then missing out on. And this resulted in them looking for alternative ways to still make money out of their fans without the fans being able to be there. And the step they took was actually allowing spectators or fans of the teams to pay for a cardboard cutout of themselves that was then placed in the stands. Fans could pay anywhere between £20 to £25 and have a picture of them cut out into a life-size cardboard piece and stuck in the stands. So while people watching on TV were watching the game, you could still somewhat see fans in the stadium and players could somewhat feel it. But that didn't replace the atmosphere or the excitement that the fans bring to the game. In terms of training and the players' ability, that was also affected. Training sessions were limited to a number of players. They weren't allowed full team trainings because of the pandemic. They were trying to limit the amount of spread that would happen, and the same was said with quarantining of players. If one person got COVID, then it tended to mean that the whole team would have had to have quarantined, and that affected games later on. They had to reschedule games, they had to play games at different dates, and this ruined the whole pattern and rhythm of the season, along with social distancing and masks that were a big part of the step towards getting the game back to normal. In the games, even the players weren't allowed to sit within 6 feet of one another on the bench, and everyone had to wear masks, and it became very weird to watch the game like this. But if it meant that it got the game back to normal, that's what was going to happen. Obviously, international games brought a massive issue because the world didn't want COVID to easily be spread across countries. That was kind of a huge limiting factor they wanted to do. So big tournaments like the Champions League was almost cancelled, and instead they had to create a different variation of it where instead of playing 2 games per team, they only played once, and it was done over a week instead of a couple of months, which the tournament normally takes. And this was also said with the Euros. The Euros competition, which is one of the biggest international competitions in Europe, was changed so that games were played in different locations around the world instead of one location that it normally does. And then more recently, in the Copa America, Brazil and Argentina were supposed to be playing, and a couple of the players that play in the Premier League, so that the English league, were actually pulled out and unable to play because of these issues of them not wanting to spread COVID internationally. Vaccines obviously made it much easier for players and the game to return to normal within sports. players aren't actually mandated to get the vaccine. However, they are pushed to get the vaccine. So this helped limit the amount of quarantine or social distancing or protocols that they had to take in order to make the game as normal as possible. And it's finally starting to return back to normal. Fans are now allowed in the stands. International has somewhat returned to normal despite the red listed countries like Brazil. However, there are still protocols. Fans that are coming to games have to get checks, have to show proof of vaccination or show proof of negative test, and have their mask within the stands. So while it's all a big problem still within sport, it's definitely reaching the area that we all want it to reach, where it looks normal again.